The first part that she represents is our girl self, or an aspect of our girl self that often can be lost, particularly in this world that demands us to be productive and to fit in. So easy in that institutionalization to lose true and authentic, wild parts of ourselves that don't fit in so well. And it makes sense at some level for us to jettison really true, powerful gifts. Our vision, what I call our Lilith vision. What did we do with that loss? Because we know that we lost it at some point, or we know we had to survive. What did we do to survive? How is life for Lilith inviting you to bust out of that?
Welcome to the Wildflow podcast with me, Charlotte Puanto, certified cycle and feminine embodiment coach and shamanic womb guide. In this podcast, I'll share my wisdom and conversations with powerful change makers, thought leaders, and embodied teachers to invite you to live cyclically in flow with your menstrual cycle instead of fearing it, to heal menstrual shame and normalize womb wisdom and period positivity, and to step into your sovereign magnetic power to create and embody the change you desire to see in your world. Settle in to unleash your wild flow. The cosmic cycles can teach us so much, as we are so connected, so attuned to, and imprinted by what's going on in the cosmos around us. And I really wanted to bring somebody who lives this work, who embodies this work, who helps people to understand the astrological and astronomical connections to our cyclical nature onto the podcast to share with us how we can do this. And I'm really excited to introduce you to Grace Funk. Grace is a ceremonialist, an astrologer and seer, as well as teacher with the School of Shamanic Womancraft. She's the creator of the Cyclical Wisdom Journal, a year-long self-reflection tool based on menstrual and seasonal and lunar cycles. Grace offers astrology and tarot readings, as well as hosts various circles and ceremonies. Grace is passionate about intentional living and deepening into radical self-trust. She lives with her husband and 3 children outside of Winnipeg, Manitoba in Canada. She's nourished by a big veggie garden and the great expanse of prairie sky above. Beautiful. I met Grace earlier this year as part of my 4 seasons journey with the School of Shamanic Womancraft when I sat down to do a Lilith reading with Grace. Since then, I have been reflecting on what she revealed to me through my birth chart, through the transits and positions of planets and in the sky, and have been really tuning into these cosmic energies and how this influences my cyclical nature. And I can't wait for you to tune in and hear about Grace's work as an astrologer, how she got into this, to hear her cycle check-in and how she relates to the cosmos at the moment, about her cyclical wisdom journal, which she's actually gifting away for free. So I highly recommend that you listen in and find the show note link to go and get your copy. We also talked about honoring the seasonal cycles through ritual and ceremony in the Northern and Southern Hemispheres at this point in time. We talked much more about the Lilith Archetype and how this aspect connects us to heal and reclaim our wild feminine, and about how we can connect with our sacred wounds, our childhood wounds, the experiences that happen to us in our lifetime, and how we can reframe them and reclaim them instead of being something that happens to us and traps us for our life, but instead how we can find the gold in that, how we can find our soul purpose in those, how we can heal, how can we find our medicine and give that back to the world around us. Such a beautiful conversation. I know you're going to really love listening to me talking with Grace and to hear what she has to share on the cosmic cycles. Welcome, Grace Funk, to Wild Flow. How are you today?
I am good. Yeah, it's evening here in Canada. morning for you. Yeah, lovely to connect and talk again.
It's really good to see you. Thanks for being with us. So,
Mm-hmm.
as always, I'd just love to start with a cycle check-in. And so I'll go first, but then I'll invite you to share um, where you are in your menstrual cycle if you have one, and how that feels for you today. And if not, then how you connect with the cycles in this moment, your own version of a cycle check-in, if you have one, and how that feels. And be interested as well, because that might be just more the menstrual cycle for you, given that your passion, your work. So for me, I'm on day 4 of my menstrual cycle today. I'm in my winter phase. I had COVID over the last about just over a week ago. And I'm feeling like I have just been resting really intensively for that time, obviously being sick, but coming back out the other side of that, I feel fine in myself now, but I've just got a croaky voice today. I was just saying to Grace before we press record that my voice has been fine all morning, but you press, you sit down to do a podcast, and of course it just wavers. But I'm just feeling I'm feeling slow and steady and grounded, and quite at peace. And this is my first little foray back into work after a while. And so, yeah, just bringing that slowness with me, and just knowing that that's where I'm at and that's how I feel, and that is all as well. So my body, that's how I feel, and I'm bleeding, but quite gently and effortlessly. And my bleed hasn't been impacted by being sick, which I'm surprised by, I think. And glad, I guess, in a way, that it just feels like my body's just doing what it's doing. So yeah, feeling quite inward still, but really happy to be doing this podcast episode with you today, Grace. How about you?
Oh.
How's your cycle check-in today?
Oh, yeah, thank you for your check-in. It's always inspiring to hear other people's experience of something we don't always talk about. I am day 7, so I guess you could say I'm in the spring. And I'm experiencing that today as a fair bit of energy, fair bit of mojo. We move house in 2 weeks' time, and so it's not quite packing boxes time yet, but it is like dealing with all the shit, the piles of things. Or I was putting stuff up online to sell, the bits and pieces that are just there and don't quite want to take them to the op shop yet. Which always takes, for me, a little bit of psychological energy. So yeah, I could tell I was on the up. My sexual drive just a bit more on the up. It's I was also born at the one day past the first quarter moon. So this is a very natural place for me, this point in the cycle where lots of things feel possible and the energy is there. And I just have to remember, and soon the energy won't be there for all these things, so pacing myself. Yeah, and all of that in a bigger context, where, yes, with my astrology hat on, I'm very conscious of Mars going retrograde. I, for whatever reason, try not to pay too much attention to Mercury going retrograde. He seems to go retrograde all the time and whatever. But with Mars going retrograde, that's a bit more of a significant planet for me, because I have Aries rising. So anyone with Aries or Scorpio ascendant, we could say Mars is the captain of your ship. So I've really been paying attention, because last time Mars went retrograde, it was just so hard to get anything off the ground. Just everything seemed to be taking so long. So this time, 2 years later, I feel a bit more prepared. But I definitely feel, but the combo of Mars going retrograde and also these 2 eclipses that we're in, between this new moon and full moon, where we're in this eclipse window, definitely almost demanded by life to take a back step and to put aspects of my work on the back burner and take it almost a bit of a sabbatical for a few months, actually. So you're catching me right at the beginning of that. So it's interesting to be heading kind of on the up menstrually and in terms of the lunar cycle as well, but also really coming down. It's winter, coming down to winter here in Canada. We've got Samhain, Halloween just around the corner in the next few days or the next week, depending on which date you use. So yeah, really feeling the descent and moving home, creating a new nest. No idea what that will be like, but again, deeply called inward. Yeah, so it's a mixed bag today. That was a longer answer. The more I thought about it, the more I thought there's more going on than I thought.
Love it so much. Thank you for sharing. And I'm really glad that you went there with the astrology aspect, because I don't know any of that in my personal, my knowledge is not astrology. So to hear you talking about, Mercury not being the one that is having, particularly significant to you, I'm like, oh, okay, because like you say, I hear so much about, oh, it's Mercury retrograde, but yeah, Mars and how that plays into your astrology and how those energies are opposing, like you said, menstrual cycle, moon cycle, but then the astrological and the seasonal as well for you. So, love that we've touched on all of those. And like you said at the start, it's evening time for you as well. And another closing in, drawing inwards. Whereas for me in Australia, it's morning, it's 11 a.m. and it's like with the moon, like all of my energies were in spring too. It's like all of my cycles are on that kind of more upward or outward gently trajectory. So I love how that's going to frame, our conversation perhaps as well, with where we're both at in different hemispheres. And just, would love to just ask you to something you mentioned in there that I think is fascinating, and I think people will be interested to hear about as well, is that you said, Halloween and Samhain and it's Beltane here in the Southern Hemisphere, those points in the year, following those sabbats, those as the sun moves around the earth, and the seasonal milestones, but that were more of those ancient practiced points of the year for agriculture, for community, etc. And we've got Halloween, which is the 31st of October, and it is very celebrated in the Northern Hemisphere, and it's the seasonally appropriate time for that there, but not here. But yet we're still celebrating. A lot of people are still celebrating Halloween here. But you talked about depending on which dates you follow. So, I receive your emails, and I love your emails, your newsletters that you send out, which always have, these astrologically really beautifully explained energies, and how we can work with those energies. But, you also mentioned in the email that I got off you, I think it was this morning, that, these sabbats are not necessarily fixed as in one day. They're more of a moment, or over a few days, and those traditional dates versus the astrological dates can change as well. I would just love to ask you, a bit more about that and how that works. So, for you in the Northern Hemisphere, if somebody's knowing of Halloween, but what is it at this Samhain point that is sort of happening for us energetically?
Yeah, each of the sabbats or seasonal moments have that traditional date that we're mostly aware of, the 21st of December, for example, being the solstice. But what we're talking about here is a relationship between the earth and the sun. So it's not astrological, it's astronomical. The actual literal relationship, and that does change just a tiny bit, can fluctuate by, I think it's about a week. So anyway, yes, the 31st of October is the Beltane for the Southern Hemisphere, or Samhain, Halloween for Northern Hemisphere. That's the traditional date. And this year it's actually the 7th of November is that exact line up between the Earth and the Sun. Basically, when the movement of Earth and Sun is exactly halfway between where they were at the equinox and where they'll be at the solstice. And that's why this Sabbat and three of the others are called cross quarters, because they're occurring in between the solstice and the equinox. That may be a bit technical, but yes, there's always 2 different dates to choose from. That's kind of nice, because if one date's not working for you, choose the other one, or you've got a whole week to work with this energy. And really, it's not like the portal just opens and then slams shut again. We're all feeling this time in the ways that we do through our bodies as the spiritual energetic antennae that they are. We're all feeling it.
Beautiful. Thank you for explaining that. I love that. That's really interesting. So astronomical, not astrological. Got it.
Yeah. You can think of astrology as more like the poem or the stories that we have projected onto the stars as humans, and astronomy is more like the actual chunks of mass or matter, and their relationship to each other is a real thing.
Fascinating. So how did you get into this, Grace? How did this become your work, what you put out into the world, and your focus, your passion? But how did you discover this for yourself?
I'm not sure in some ways the very origins of it. The earliest origins that I can remember being, say, about 5 years old at the library, and I'd watch my mum go off into the adult fiction section, and then I could pull out the Dorry the Witch book, and it was safe to read Dorry the Witch when she wasn't looking. So anything witchy was taboo, and I grew up Christian. All this astrological stuff, the tarot, everything like that was taboo and not even really on my radar. So I continued to kind of feel very bemused that here I am, have ended up in a very esoteric place, you could say, kind of more esoteric than would be my preference, which is perhaps why I keep trying to make the esoteric practical and kind of connected to our embodied experience. Feels important to me. But astrology kicked in at some point in my early 30s or maybe late 20s. But then the piece that really set me on this path was doing the 4 seasons journey, just like you are. And the stuff that our teacher Jane was talking about, the lunar cycle, the menstrual cycle, and particularly the overlays of all these cycles, the seasonal cycle. Suddenly I was connecting it with the Mars cycle, every planetary cycle, like this shape, this waxing and waning. I was just seeing this shape everywhere. I was seeing it in myself, in my body. I was seeing it in the astrology stuff that I'd been, slowly learning. Astrology is a very slow process, I find. For myself, it's just layer upon layer. So it really was, something happened in that 4 seasons journey that brought together 2 things that are kind of seemed on paper kind of separate, say menstruation and astrology, but for me they're the same thing, or they're not the same thing, but they're deeply connected. And somehow that's put me on this path. And I continue to be surprised, but it makes for really fruitful, interesting conversations with people. And I think there is something so affirming knowing that we actually are connected to the cosmos. It's like it's such a powerful remembering that we are nature. Jane was saying that in her conversation with you. And the cosmos is nature too. The stars are nature. We are in a real dance with the stars, even if we don't fully understand it. I like to think of it as a poem, but that poem is real, or that song is real. We're hearing it. We hear it in our different ways. And I think that's powerful nourishment for this world that we live in, which is so literal and in a sense so ugly. It seems like we just keep creating a lot of ugliness. And I find that cosmic connection really beautiful and also synchronous or oracular. something bigger than me. All of that I find really affirming.
Mm. That's beautiful. That feels really, really lovely. And I really agree with you. I'm fascinated. I think, from for many years, for a long time, for as long as I can remember, I've stood outside and stared at the sky, especially the night sky, when when it's dark, when it's clear, and you can just see. And knowing that we are just that teeny, teeny, tiny little blip of speck of dust on one rock in the vast universe, and every single twinkle is another a star or a planet or other cosmic entities that just goes on forever and forever and forever. And it both makes me feel so peacefully insignificant and tiny that this literal world, this world that we've created, this stress of getting through and achieving and having money to do what we need to do and blah 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 blah, that culture of, well, what it means to be, I guess, a human in a community, in that kind of capitalist way of you've got to contribute and get through and blah blah blah, all of that kind of stuff. It just takes it, it just makes me realize just how unimportant that actually is, and that's just human fabricated crap, whereas actually we are just a really kind of small and what does it all mean? Does it mean all of that, or does it mean that there's this whole like you say, nature, just this huge universe that's going on around us? And it makes me feel, I really like that it's always given me a sense of peace and calm when things have felt, the day to day has felt a bit stressful. But then also just this real interconnectedness of all things, and how we are just, here in this moment, in this experience, the same as, whatever could be happening on the other side of the universe as well. Like, it just blows my mind. And I just feel like, how can we not be, how can we forget that there's this universe around us which is infinite, and be so caught up in the mundane of every day? So it kind of, long before I realized anything, that I was the spiritual being with this connection to cycles and really this connection to nature, before I had language to really understand that, I used to just marvel at the sky and say it to my husband or my friends or whatever, and just feel quite alone in that sense of wonder. And when you were speaking just then, I just felt there was a mirror between what you were saying and how I've kind of always felt as well. And I think it's really, of course we are influenced by what's going on around us in the sky and beyond.
Yeah, I think when we turn our face that way, whether in an astrology reading or looking at the sky, yeah, it can change our perspective and just open things up a bit. That's what I often find. I think another thing I value is that everything is in motion. And of course, the study of planets, whether in astronomy or astrology, is a noticing of that movement. And so that's affirming too, for those times when we feel stuck. We actually aren't. We actually are transforming, and that some of that cosmic movement somehow can mirror to us opportunities to, take a break, like I'm feeling right now, or to get going. There can be a kind of flowing attunement in our own movement. Yeah.
That's a beautiful point. We are always in motion, but it's a gentle pacing as well.
And I love that the lunar cycle is the one cycle all around the world we share. We all have our different menstrual cycles, and the seasonal cycles, is divided by hemisphere, but the lunar cycle we follow together. We live that one together.
Same.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I always think, in an online world as well, where we can be connected with people all over the place. Like you say, it's the one thing that kind of binds us. We might be in different seasons or time of day, etc. Yeah, I love that too. I think it's really, really beautifully connecting. Hmm. So you've created a cycle wisdom journal, and you've said that's a year long, a journal, a self reflection tool, and it's something that you have created for yourself and for others as well, and that it includes the menstrual cycle as well as the seasonal cycle and the lunar cycles. And I think that's really beautiful. And I'd love to just hear a bit about, why you created that and what we can get out of tuning into those, all of those aspects every day.
Mm. I guess I come by journaling honestly. Like I've journaled kind of almost since I realized that was a thing for many years. And this journal is different because it gives me a view of 1 month on one page. And I don't know about you, but finding things in my copious, longhand journaling, just finding the patterns is much harder just because there's a volume of words or pages. So the journal, I actually do both. I journal regularly and in my regular journal, and I journal in a cyclical wisdom journal. That's the heart of the journal is basically a circle on a page divided into 4 quarters with the 4 moons, the 4 main phases of the moon. And then I just jot in there things that are happening, big things, small things, things that triggered me, all just in a shorthand because it's, just one A4 letter size page. And so basically I'm looking there and going, okay, this month held all these things. Oh, I remember when that happened. And around the edge, if people want to, they can put the days of their menstrual cycle. So straight away, again, there's an extra layer of information that, okay, the moon was there and my menstrual cycle was the exact opposite of what the moon was doing. So there's that extra layer. And yes, there's a seasonal place to journal the seasonal stuff as well. So I find the feedback I often get is that, yeah, it's powerful to see it all on one page. I've noticed there's often connections between what's happening at opposite sides of the month. So 2 weeks later, there's often a connection to something that was happening 2 weeks before. Like there'd be a connection. We're journeying with stuff at the full moon, and then at the new moon, it might be feeling a bit different, for example. But what I'm finding, because this is now the 9th year that I've created it, I'm releasing it at the full moon very soon, the next few days. Now I can line up like this particular lunar cycle in October. What was happening last year? What was happening the year before? What was happening the year before? And I can do that succinctly because it's all just on one page. And that basically is actually why we're moving house, because I did that a few months ago and realized, wow, there's such strong house, home, nest energy in this month, which is no surprise because astrologically it's connected to my home space. And anyway, it prompted us on this house hunting journey that's led to a move to 5 acres and just a different kind of grounded living. But yes, so that's something I create every year. And actually, I wanted to say that this year I am gifting it out into the world, which doesn't mean I am hoping that, some kind of something comes back to support me in the work, but it feels important to keep just, I don't know, feeling my way into stepping out of such a capitalist, commodified reality. It seems like that is the heart of where so many things are tied up and so much non-cyclical living happens. So much denial of our cycles and what we're needing happens because of money and because of the job. And like you were saying, so sending the journal out into the world in a different way, it's just, I guess, part of an experiment this year. But it is therefore very accessible, and people are so welcome to download it, have a look at it, give it a go, and work out if it's of value. Yeah. But yes, it's basically the menstrual cycle, lunar cycle, and seasonal cycle, a tool to increase your awareness about those, and particularly what they mean for you. Doesn't matter what you say or what I say. What does it mean for, one person in their body? Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for such a beautiful gift. I hope everyone goes, and I'll put the link in the show notes so people can go and
Yeah,
find
awesome.
it and download it. If you're happy to share that. And I just really love what you said about it all being on a, one piece of paper. That's something I've tried so many different journals and astrological journals and menstrual cycle journals and all the journals, and just having it on one page, like you said, that month view, in a round format as well, from what I can, I think that's right. Round, is it
Yes.
right? Yeah, round
Yeah.
format. Um, that just feels really right for me, to be able to map those things on and to see those influences, and love that you can track back over time and see these repeating themes that keep coming up for you, and to work with that. I think it's sometimes simple is best, isn't it? We don't, we can write and write and write, like you say. I do the same, write and write, but you can't see the patterns in that. It's that circle overview. So it sounds amazing. And yeah, definitely will be checking that out myself.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And I love that you're choosing to give that this year so that we can, step into that cyclical living more and more. And I hope that lots of people go and try your journal. So thank you. Yeah. So you mentioned that you have been doing, or you have done, the 4 seasons journey with the School of Shamanic Womancraft yourself, and that's how we met, actually, isn't it, this year? I'm doing mine, and one of the things that we are gifted, or comes as part of the experience at the start, is an astrological reading with you. And I was really curious when I read that I was going to be having a Lilith reading. I thought, "Ooh, what is this? That sounds amazing." And the experience was really profound, actually. And I had mine, I think it was back in February, and we are now coming into November tomorrow, the last day of October today when we record this. And the knowledge that I learned from you, and the invitations to reflect, and the reading as a whole, has really shaped me this year and revealed a lot to me, and opened up portals for journeying deeply with the School of Shamanic Womancraft, in their process that they have for the 4 seasons journey. But it's really, I feel like this is something that's going to be, really powerful for the long term, to have that awareness. And I have been telling people about the Lilith reading, and recommending that people seek you out for this reading, and to learn about this archetype as well. So I would really love to just take the opportunity to ask you, if you're happy to share with us, what is the Lilith archetype? How does she show up in our astrology? What is this reading about, really? How does she invite us to, heal and reclaim this wild feminine aspect? I'd just love to hear you ask, what it is, what this Lilith reading is about, so that people can hear about it. Is that okay?
Okay, first off, my sense of Lilith is ever evolving. It evolves with each conversation with someone, because I have a sense of what that archetype of Lilith is for me. But it's always amazing to hear how it's been lived in someone else's story. So I just really want to honor the dynamism. But essentially, to speak maybe in more cliches, Lilith represents for me, and this would be a kind of quirky maybe naming of Lilith. The classic would be she's like a dark either demon or demoness. And if you go on Pinterest, say, and look up Lilith, you'll see she has this dark energy. And in the Jewish scriptures, she's a demon. She was the first wife of Adam. So you could read a whole bunch there around the beginnings of the patriarchy and the loss of whatever it was that we had before, whatever kind of relating between men and women. But for me, what's evolved in these many conversations with people talking about Lilith is that she represents. I'm going to talk about her in three parts. For me, the first part that she represents is our girl self, or an aspect of our girl self that often can be lost, particularly in this world that demands us to be productive and to fit into the institutions that our girl selves often put into, like school, for example, or even hospital, or whatever institutions we've had to engage with. So easy in that institutionalization to lose true and authentic, wild parts of ourselves that don't fit in so well. And there's such a strong need in us to fit in, to feel socially safe. As we know, living through the pandemic, these things were so highlighted. We need to feel safe with each other. And that can be so fraught sometimes that it's easy, and it makes sense at some level for us to jettison really true, powerful gifts. Our vision, what I call our Lilith vision. So in readings, I'm often listening for that in people's stories, like what have they come into the world? What vision are they holding? And sometimes we see that through what we feel deeply disillusioned about and what was taken away from us in childhood. So Lilith for me represents our really powerful part of our girl self. Then the next place I look for her is in our teenage years. Like, what did we do with that loss? Because we know that we lost it at some point, or we know we had to survive. What did we do to survive? So many different coping strategies and even experiments. Fine, if I've lost that, well, fuck it. What else am I going to do? Like, so much experimentation can happen. And this is a place where so much shame also can build up in those experiences of trying to survive, trying to make sense of the world, given that we've lost some of what we would have made sense of the world with. So there's a lot of shame busting that we can do there, and actually really valuing our teenage selves and what choices we made. We were working with a deep soulful logic in those moments, making whatever choices, and of course learning massive lessons along the way, creating skill sets that we often use later in life. So gathering the gifts. And then the third face of Lilith is really the present moment. Where is life calling you to be? And maybe not just any old life, but maybe the Lilith kind of life that is a bit wild, a bit less tame, doesn't maybe fit into the productive, commoditized, neat, pretty, whatever package that maybe we've been told to be. How is life for Lilith inviting you to bust out of that box? And it's always present. It's like no one comes to me and we get to that point and go, I can't work out what's going on. And I love that I'm here on your podcast with you living your Lilith gift, which is helping everyone talk about some of this stuff that we haven't talked about because it's been shameful or shamed within us. I don't know if that summarizes it clearly enough, but that's a little bit of Lilith.
Thank you for explaining that. And I really love that we're here too talking about this. And when we had our reading, you very much looked at my natal chart, didn't you? And you're looking at where things were in which house and what placement, and asking me to connect these these pieces of these faces of Lilith and this story together. And I ended up
Mm-hmm.
with this story in a way, which was like a healing story, a medicine story, a story of this reclamation of these parts that were lost, and how I had, experimented or survived in the middle and then reclaimed these parts and can express these gifts now. And
Mm-hmm.
that's such a beautiful, a process, a really healing experience, instead of feeling the shame of the losses or the experiences that you might have had, but to take them back and to see, these are part of your story, these are part of your journey, because without them you wouldn't be here right now, and you wouldn't be
Yeah,
in this
totally.
place at this time with
Mm-hmm.
these opportunities to take it back and gift it back as well to the world, as my gift that we all have a gift. We all have a way of something to give that we can take from these kind of woundings. And it was just such a powerful experience, Grace. I really thank you for that.
Mm. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I love that astrology can give us, it's like an invitation to dive into what actually happened. Like, um, obviously, I often say that the natal chart, that the map of the moment of your birth is 2D. It's just for me, it's a piece of paper. And it gives me great pointers of like a direction of questions to ask you, but then it comes alive in talking.
Mm.
Talking, and the archetype of Lilith comes alive. Or Chiron is the other one I work with a lot. They really come alive. And this work of you could almost say re-enchanting the wound, or
Mm.
just looking at the wound in a totally different way is feels so important at the moment. It's just feeling more and more important, to the point where I'm I can't, I don't even have words for it, but I know that that word wound is coming to have a whole different meaning for me. Almost like, instead of it being like a crippling, it's almost like a crack within us where some really wild content can come out, like touching us directly into life and what wants to happen, or pain, or something that really opens us up. But think of it as a crack, a wild place within us, as opposed to something we just need to patch over and get the fuck on with, you know?
Mm.
Anyway, that's just all bubbling within me.
Mm.
It's part of what I'm taking into this sabbatical. I need to compost some of that and probably ditch some of my conditioning around wounding, full stop, trauma, full stop. What are these experiences? I think they're much richer than we've been led to believe.
Mm. Yeah, I really feel that. Not like things, these, there can be terrible things that happen, and they can profoundly impact us and harm us, and limit us in lots of ways. I think there's something really interesting in the story we attach to woundings, like you say. Is it something that we're a victim of, or this happened, therefore that's who I am, and it defines you in a like a lifelong way? Or does it have an opportunity within it? Or if you become something or learn something that you wouldn't have if you hadn't have had that, and how can that be used for for your own good and for the good of others as well? I think it's really
Mm-hmm.
fascinating, and I think that's something that I've been really connecting with this year as well, with the 4 seasons. And you mentioned Chiron there as being the archetype of the wounded healer. And this is, I think it's such a fascinating place of healing and transforming and growing, and really kind of being initiated into a different version of yourself as well, into your medicine. by reclaiming these, like you say, these wounds. And so I'm really fascinated, to hear what's going to come through for you in this sabbatical time, because I really relate to what you said there. Does that feel
Mm,
true for you?
mm. Definitely that it's in going back and reclaiming these places that we, for one, can know ourselves better, not be inflicting ourselves so much on other people. Um, but two, yeah, living the gifts and maybe even able to see the world differently. Yeah. But with eyes that haven't, yeah, eyes beyond however our eyes were conditioned. So just, yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, there's just so much bubbling on in me around how do I dream bigger? Obviously, what we're in is coming to some kind of end. It's because it's not working and it's coming to a natural end. But how do we see what else is possible or what's coming? Just how? Uh, and I think the wound or the pain, the the illness, the lack of having it all together can perhaps give us eyes to see, well, what else is possible here? Yeah. Again,
mm,
without too much language for
mm.
it. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And a really, like you say, a really important time for us to be doing this kind of inner reflections and dreaming and opening to possibilities, as the world changes so much, and things that we didn't think were possible a couple of years ago are now quite normal for many people, just in terms of, post pandemic living and into the future. I think that's um, a really important thing for us to be starting to dream about collectively as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Grace.
And not even having to think our way through it, but listening to our bodies, letting our bodies lead the
Mm,
way. It's somehow in just talking like this, it reminded me that I wanted to say partly I am day 7 of my cycle because I had a 23-day cycle prior to that, which is
mm,
has historically been very unusual for me. But actually this year, and obviously I'm 42, so perimenopause is around, it's hovering. I don't think it's quite here yet, but it's definitely coming closer. And this year I've had five five out of my 11 cycles that I've had so far, 5 of them have been very, like, on that shorter end, day either 23, and there was one that was even day 19. And what I noticed was each time that happened, usually I'd be 28, 29 roughly. Each time this shorter cycle happened, I was in some kind of ceremony, whether it was hosting a powerful online ceremony for my community, whether it was I went to my first Sundance festival here, so deep Indigenous ceremony, started bleeding straight away.
mm.
uh, a women's festival here that could finally happen post pandemic, the first time ever. So gathering with all those women in ceremony, bleeding, um, and hosting a wilderness solo when everyone came back, started bleeding.
Oh,
So
wow.
I wanted to bring that here. I meant to mention it just at the beginning, but I wanted to bring that here. This sense of our bodies in a dance with ceremony and us dreaming life into being in those ceremonies, whether that has been, come up in these conversations that you've been having. For me, it connects to what we were just talking about, in the sense that our bodies can highlight what's important or be a guide or um, be part of the conversation in really obvious kind of ways. Uh, yeah, just wanted to throw that in there.
Oh, I love that. That's incredible. How special. 5 times. That is no
Mm-hmm.
coincidence. Your body dreaming life into being through your blood and through ceremony. That's
Mm-hmm.
very special. And it's funny actually you say that, because I have reflected so many times how I might schedule a ceremony. I do menarche circles for girls, particularly. This seems to happen. And I can schedule that date months in advance. And my cycle has been quite irregular over the last a couple of years or so being postpartum and have been breastfeeding, and it's become, it's settled down now. But for a good while there, I couldn't predict when my bleed would come. And so I would book these dates in for these ceremonies, and lo and behold, I would always be bleeding on these ceremonies. And I just think this is just, it can't be coincidence, because it happened every single time. And or doing online things as well. And I think I would have used to have thought that was a real inconvenience, a real, oh, I'm not going to have as much energy or as much focus, or I'm not going to feel like I'm superwoman and all over it kind of thing from a logistical organizational point of view. But I actually find that being able to, hold space or be in a space whilst bleeding is exquisite. To be held, to be more of a sense of co-creation, less of a dominant teacher kind of energy as well, and much more of a kind of softer guide, for example. And just the level of intuition, or just trust that I can have more in what will come out of my mouth will be what is meant to be said, rather than needing to feel like I'm, fully organized, for example. And I just wonder whether you have an experience of that too, of a difference in holding space or being in space whilst bleeding, and whether you feel that's, it's a gift that is happening there as part of, how it's meant to be for yourself and for others. That's my sense.
Yeah, I love listening to you. I was bringing it as a question. I'm interested if any of your listeners, have answers too. I really relate or resonate with that sense of being just having a different body presence, a bit softer. And I almost imagine it's like my consciousness is settled just a bit lower in my body, closer to my womb, or some balance between head, heart, and womb. And yes, a bit quieter, and somehow it's just very affirming, like affirming of what I'm doing. Like, good, this is good work. I now bleed. Like, somehow it's an affirmation.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. It's an affirmation. Yes. And it seems like such a particularly in the spaces where I'm, if it's a menarche circle for girls, to be able to say, I'm here and I'm bleeding, and I'm not hiding that. I can be quite open about it and give that gift as well of sharing that beautiful energy. Because like my energy right now as I'm bleeding here, I feel like I'm more in that kind of softer, I feel quite psychically open as well, space, and just letting this conversation flow through. Whereas other times in my cycle, I can be much more, well, I want to talk about this and I want to talk about that, and less able to kind of just be with what is. Yeah. And I wonder, like you say, if anyone else has that experience too. Yeah, such a gift.
Send you some comments or send you their story.
Yeah, please do, if you're listening. So, speaking of ceremony, I would, love to ask you before we close, whether you have a personal practice or ritual, perhaps for Samhain, that we are in this portal is opening. Whether you will be doing anything over the next week, perhaps, to just honor that for yourself.
Yeah, today I just set up an altar. We have an altar kind of going the whole time, but I just refreshed it today and pulled out all. A year or two ago, I just got photo frames for all the grandparents, like my grandparents and my husband's grandparents who have passed. Or actually, I got all of them, and it's handy just to have photos of your ancestors, kind of in an easy format to put out, so that you can be mindful of them I'd just plug that idea. I found it helpful. So I've pulled out the frames and put them around the altar, and actually printed off 2 more photos. One of my great 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 grandfather, who has, his eyes are amazing, 2 different color eyes. So he reminds me of, he was Irish. It reminds me of the seer, and being able to see the world differently, coming down my ancestral line. And another great 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 grandmother who is working with me doing some doll making, needle felting that I'm just embarking on. So the altar is feeling powerful, and I will be with that, having that in my home every day for the next week or 2. I will light the candles for that. No doubt we will get inundated with knocks on the door for candy. In that classic North American Halloween, I'm still working out. Probably won't participate in that. I just kind of get a bit boggled by how much sugar the kids go home with and all the plastic rubbish, and so I probably will just bail out on that and put the post-it note on the door saying, sorry, no candy left. That's what you do if you don't want to participate. But the thing that we will do is gather with friends outside around the fire, have a little ceremony, have some feast food. And last year we played like kind of fun, scary games in the dark with the kids, like running around, hiding in the dark and trying to find each other. And stargazing. So depending on the weather, which can be quite unpredictable here at this time of year in Canada, can get cold, but we're having quite a warm spell at the moment. So they're the few bits that Samhain will mean for me, as well as some journaling, just taking stock. And like I said, Samhain really feels like the opening of this sabbatical space, and I feel like I'll step out of that again at Imbolc. So in 2 sabbats time, some kind of reemergence is what's shaping up. It wasn't really a plan, but I could just feel it in me. So it feels like a portal that I'm stepping through. But how about for you and your family? I'd love to hear.
Yeah, thank you for sharing yours as well. That sounds really special. I love that you're working with your ancestors in that way too. That's very, very cool. Well, for us, it's Beltane. So we are in the opposite pole of the wheel. We are just coming into peak of spring, and the weather really feels like it. It's finally warmed up, but we are having some pretty big storms blowing in as well. So it feels like there's a shift. There's definitely atmospheric shifts happening. And so for me, I also have an altar. I have an altar that I tend to through the year, and I'm not always very I don't necessarily go to my altar every day, but it's there. It's my guide. It's my kind of sacred place that reminds me to connect inwards and with the seasons and with my own cycle as well, and the moon. And so for me, it's I've just been away as well, so I feel like I've just come back, and I feel like I am ready to tend that altar and really shift it into a reflection of Beltane, which for me will be, I bought some seashells and water items from the beach, which I do want to add in there, and flowers and kind of fruits and treasures from the garden and nature, just to really celebrate that lusciousness that we're in right now, when everything is just so green and beautiful. And I just got myself actually a Beltane witch's toolbox. It's a product from I can't remember what the business name is, but I saw it and I thought, ooh, that feels quite nice. And so I'm going to be going through that, and the focus is sex magic and that kind of pleasure and sensuality. And so I feel like I'm really focusing on that at this point, and I'm yet to really kind of discern any specific rituals, but that's been my intention for this time. And I will journey with that toolbox particularly, but in my body, I've been and with more recent cycles, I think I've really felt it when we moved from in bulk to into spring is the sense of aliveness and passion and exploring my sexuality from a place of no shame. So I feel like that's
Mm-hmm.
what's going to be coming up for me. And my children really want to go trick or treating. Where I live, we don't have small children, many families in the area. I live in a small village in the middle of the countryside. And so it's not something that happens here, but in the towns, no, they do. And it's not the
Mm.
seasonally appropriate time, but of course they don't want to miss out. And so it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
hard because their view of this time is Halloween, it's chocolate, it's dressing up, it's playing the games, it's joining in and not missing out.
Mm.
Which yeah, I'm kind of doing that thing that I feel like you're doing, like one foot in, a spiritual kind of inner world and one that's appropriate for the seasons and a spiritual connection with, this corporate Halloween idea that's all
Mm.
around us and it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to retreat from and separate from when you do have children who want to be part of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I we're going to let them join in with some friends just for a brief period, but I really want to invite them into reflecting on on Beltane and honoring where this note, just noticing this earth turning and where we're at
Mm.
seasonally. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have to think about
I,
that a little bit too.
I do love that dressing up is involved. Like whether for Beltane, I imagine Beltane and the maypole and all that as quite a dress up, fun kind of energy, and dressing up at Samhain too. Like I can get why the kids want to dress up, and us adults as well. Like it's so important to dip into these other ways of being. So I guess I maybe I'm just honoring that as a really natural call. Like maybe the kids are onto something. Like, yeah, it's about time we had some dress up fun or had some, did some of this kind of socializing. And
Mm,
it just happens that the corporate stuff is we're going to fly pumpkins in from America. We could just leave that part off,
yeah.
uh, just create our own community fun.
I love that. It's a beautiful thing. And, with spring, that playfulness, wanting to really
Mm,
embody that. So, yeah, I think that's what I will be need to really think about and create a little something around that. That feels lovely to do with them, bring them into it.
hmm.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
great actually. I got in our community. I just heard that we're having a community. This is not something I'm organizing, but it's something that I can attend if I've been invited to. They have a Beltane celebration for the children who, are being initiated through their rite of passage, their puberty rite of passage or
Oh,
first
wow.
first bleed.
Okay,
And
that's
the
wonderful.
elder women are organizing this, and it's going to be just past the traditional time of Beltane here,
Yeah.
but in the next couple of weeks or so. And there's one for the girls and one for the boys, and I just think that's so beautiful. So really cool.
Yeah.
Just love that
Oh,
they're doing
wow.
that.
That's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
So I want to take my daughter along to that to just witness and just see, and when it's her turn, she can hopefully be initiated. Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the power of communal recognition of our children just can't be underestimated. And most of us didn't receive it, so we don't really have an embodied sense of it. But
Mm.
I really think it is a huge part of the way forwards, a huge part of empowering. Yeah, I know so much of your work is about empowering girls, and I think or children in general. Huge part of it is,
Yeah.
yeah, how do we
Yeah.
catch them at these moments in playful ways and
Mm.
colorful, inviting ways? How do we celebrate their becoming?
Yeah. I really feel that too. I think it's so profound to give them that experience of, this is something to be treasured and something to be noticed, and not just oh yeah, it happened and you just carry on. I think, children, I'm always marveling at my children, how much they look at me, mum, look at me, mum, look at me. They want to be witnessed in
They do.
absolutely everything. Like, I can do this now, or I'm trying this now. Look how high I jumped. And so these big moments, that's, if we're not witnessing in those big moments, to be unseen, it's something for us as an adult, but for children, I just think they feel these things so much more, don't they? They seem to really need to be seen and witnessed. And
yeah,
to do that
you're bringing me back to some of that girl self that we talked about earlier. I think that's a way we can lose something important for ourselves when we feel unseen in who we are, what we're needing. It's one facet of soul loss, you could say.
Definitely. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Grace. I've just loved this conversation, and I'm sure everyone's going to get so much out of it and want to come and find you and connect with you. So your website, it's priestessyourlife.com. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Correct. Is that where people should come find you?
Yes, come find me. And I apologize in advance for not offering some things like readings. I am taking this sabbatical, but will come back much refreshed and excited to hear people's stories. And yes, like I said, the journal will be there available for whoever wants to try it out. And if that gift resonates with you, then there's many ways you could reciprocate back to me, but also gift some, that sense of abundance on somehow. I don't think it has to be a linear, I'm trying to bust out of this linear transactional way. So a gift is there for you if you would like it.
Thank you. That's incredible. I would definitely come over and have a look. I think it sounds amazing. So it's going to be out on the full moon. So
full moon in Taurus. I think that's the 8th of November.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlotte. It's been a rich kind of cosmic and embodied weaving here. Wonderful.
Thank you so much for listening in. If you're loving this podcast and you'd love to help me spread the wisdom shared, please leave a review or rating, or share this with somebody who you think would love to listen in. I'm really passionate about creating ripples of change and getting this information to more women, girls, and people with a cycle so that they can reclaim their cyclic natures too. And if you'd love to dive in deeper with learning more about how to connect with your cycle and rites of passages, come and join our free Wild Flow Circle community, or choose a course and learn with me on my online learning hub. All the links are in the show notes. And until next time, be well and go with the flow of your cyclic nature.